On your Tuesday episode of Locked On Raptors, we've had these two games this week against the Miami Heat at home circled all season long as games that could determine the outcome of the Toronto Raptors regular season. Now they got to go win them.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors. It is Tuesday, April the 7th, and I am your host, your pal, Sean Woodley, here to talk about a couple of big old games tonight and Thursday against the Miami Heat. That is what's on tap to start the show. We've also got some mailbag questions from the sickos in the Locked On Raptors Discord server that we'll get to later on. Stuff about making or not making the playoffs, stuff about this offseason, all of the fun, despair-twinged questions we like when the basketball stakes are high and things don't feel super good with the sort of footing the Raptors stand on. We'll get to all of that throughout today's show, which is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase, and we're off and running here. And yeah, well, we're going to start with a big old basketball game tonight for the local basketball team in Toronto against Miami Heat. First of two games here in Toronto against the Heat. I haven't played the Heat since December, where they won two games in quick succession in the middle of that month, where otherwise the Raptors kind of lost all of the games. Those were kind of the two bright spots of that stretch of basketball, where RJ Barrett was out, Jakob Poeltl was in and out of the lineup, and things didn't feel super great on the offensive end in particular. And look, things don't feel awesome with the Raptors right now either. You lose to the Boston Celtics after sort of following a similar script on Sunday. Scotty Barnes, obviously we've talked at length about his offense maybe not being in the place you want it to be right now. There's some injuries to deal with, though hopefully someone returning tonight that could help make things easier. But yeah, like, you know, you talk a big game all season long about, you know, growth and learning and wanting to kind of, you know, step into understanding what it is to be a winning team. Like, this is a night to kind of prove that you've in fact learned some stuff from the ups and downs along the way. And you can bury the Miami Heat effectively if you win tonight. The Raptors go into this game with a two-game edge in the loss column on the Heat. They have the 2-0 lead in the season series. And if you win tonight, it kind of takes some of the pressure off of Thursday's game, because the Heat will then be 3 games behind. Basically impossible for them to catch up to the Raptors without them having the tiebreaker as well. And the Heat will be sort of relegated to 9-10 zone for sure. The Raptors, you know, they got some fortune last night. It was a good night for scoreboard watching. The Atlanta Hawks lose to the New York Knicks. That's a big one. They're now just 1 game ahead. And of course, the Raptors had the tiebreaker there. The Philadelphia 76ers lost as well to the San Antonio Spurs, even though Wemby left that game halfway through. Kind of a missed opportunity for the Sixers there. And the Raptors, once again, are back into the 6th seed. And Basketball Reference now has them as the favorites to be the 6th seed. 42% chance. The Sixers are at 33% chance, and all the other teams are sprinkled in there in some way, shape, or form behind the Raptors and Sixers by a lot. And we've seen that these odds can flip enormously with one result. And so, yeah, like, you win tonight, and that makes it all the more possible and likely you're going to be the 6th seed, which is what you want. You want to avoid the randomness of the play. You want to avoid playing possibly the Boston Celtics in round 1, who I think are the team to be feared the most among the top 4 in the Eastern Conference. You know, I would love to see the Raptors play the Cavs. It might not work out that way. Would still much rather see the Raptors play the Knicks, who are going through some weirdness right now, than the Boston Celtics. And I don't want to sort of even entertain the idea of, oh, do you lose the 7-8 play-in game so you can get the Pistons in round 1? No, like, you don't want to be in a single elimination game with playoffs or not playoffs on the line in that second play-in game. You want to be able to just make your way through easily and have a week off. This is a team that's banged up. This is a team that, like, needs the week between the end of the season and the start of the playoffs to get right. And yeah, like, winning tonight against the Heat can go a long way towards securing that week off. Plenty of work still to do, but it's a big one for sure. And so, yeah, just kind of recap where things sit with the Raptors and the Heat on the season. The Raptors are 2-0 against Miami. A couple of pretty impressive victories back in December, where I wouldn't say they were exactly at their best, but this is a matchup where the Raptors seem to acquit themselves pretty well. We've talked a lot this season about how the Raptors and Heat are kind of mirror images of one another, sort of middling offense, top 10 defense, and they've kind of oscillated back and forth between one or the other being like the 11th best team in net rating on the season. I think the Raptors have a slight edge on Miami right now. Yeah, it's a fun matchup. It's never the most like entertaining brand of basketball, but I think there are a lot of chess pieces getting moved around, and that itself is compelling. And of course, the real pressure point that you're always going to see in a Raptors Heat game is zone defense. The Heat play the most zone in the league, 15.1 possessions of zone per game thrown out, almost double the second most common zone defense team in the league per synergy. And we know that's not throughout the entire season been something the Raptors have handled super gracefully. That said, fun fact here, the Toronto Raptors are 9th in the league in 3-point percentage since January 15th. I kind of used that as that's when Immanuel Quickley kind of got out of whatever funk he was in through December and early January and really took off. Obviously, he's missed some time, but he could be back tonight. We'll get into that. They've been a pretty good 3-point shooting team since the time. They're actually 5th since February the 1st as well. And while on the season, they've seen 315 total possessions of zone defense and have not scored very well on those. They're 26th in the league in points per possession at less than 0.9 points per possession against zone on the season. They've seen just 36 zone possessions since February the 1st when their three started to go in. And in that time on those, again, small sample possessions, 1.111 points per possession, that would rank as a top 10 mark over the course of the season against zone defense. And so it's been a little less of a thing that the Raptors have seen. They will see it against the Heat. We know this. The Heat will always throw zone out no matter who the opponent is. And the Raptors have been a team where they've been very liberal with how often they've thrown zone out. But in recent time, obviously Jacoby Walter has been a big part of this. Immanuel Quickley figuring things out in the second half has been a big part of this. Brandon Ingram, Mamu kind of getting back into form from three. Like, they are a better 3-point shooting team than they were kind of, just on the raw numbers in the sort of middle part of the season. And, the last couple of months, like, they've been making the ones they take. They don't take a lot. They're still pretty low in volume. But if you're up against a zone and you got to let them rip, like, the Raptors have shown that they can, in fact, maybe bust a zone with their 3-point shooting in a way they haven't before. And also we know that sort of their secret weapon against zone is often sort of doing it from inside out, right? The sort of interior passing of Scotty Barnes, Jakob Poeltl, Collin Murray-Boyles, like, those guys are as important as the 3-point shooters are to busting zone. And as the season has gone on, they've gotten progressively better and more comfortable with it. Again, you haven't had a lot of reps against it, just 36 possessions over the last 2+ months against zone. So they might be out of practice here, but you would hope that in practice over the last little while, which they haven't had a lot of practice time, but in their sort of walkthroughs, you would hope that they're kind of revisiting and reviewing the film of what has worked against zone this season. Because, again, the Heat, they threw a ton of it against the Raptors in their games in December. The Raptors did not handle it like wonderfully, but they did kind of eventually chip away and kind of make it happen in like the fourth quarters of those games where it became untenable because whether it was Scotty Barnes creating from the middle, whether it was 3-pointers going down, like, they ended up breaking through eventually. And you would hope that that's something they can do if the Heat are going to be very zone heavy tonight. Also to note, injury wise, it seems like both Norm Powell and Tyler Herro are probable for the game tonight. Interesting because it obviously makes them more potent offensively, but it does kind of make them a little bit easier to target on defense. And the Raptors, of course, are a team that has been known to succeed punishing mismatches, whether it's Scotty, whether it's Ingram, whether it's RJ Barrett. I think that's a place where they can kind of go to work. And so I don't know if having both Herro and Powell is ultimately kind of like the optimized version of the Miami Heat necessarily. It kind of messes with their balance a little. And Immanuel Quickley is questionable for tonight. Would be really nice to have Immanuel Quickley and his shooting available for this game. There's no doubt about it. He just makes the team make a lot more sense. The starting five has been nails when he's been in there, and you would really hope that he's able to just kind of gut it out. The encouraging signs from the last handful of games or the last, handful of, I guess, practices he's gone through and workarounds and workups, like, seems like he's, heading in the right direction. No setbacks per Michael Grange, all of that. He'd be a really important player to have to be at sort of full tilt against the Heat tonight. You hope he's able to go considering the stakes of the game. And then you have Collin Murray-Boyles, who's questionable as well. Took that shot to, I guess, his thigh or his quad or whatever in the last game. And you hope he's able to go because Collin Murray-Boyles is really good. Obviously, the defensive versatility, the ability to kind of match with Bam physicality-wise, and then also his interior zone busting, passing, and dunker spot stuff, and nail work as like a flasher in the zone in the middle. Like, all that stuff's going to be super valuable tonight too. So Big one, man. Like, just go win. They had a real mixed bag of inspired performances and big stinky duds in games where there have been stakes this year. And let's not forget them running the Orlando Magic off the court and sending the franchise into a state of existential crisis just like 9 days ago. Like, there's a team that has shown it can rise to the occasion in there somewhere. It's not always been there. Tonight is a night for it to be there. And looking forward to these, man. Like, games with stakes. Like, it's what makes a playoff run fun, interesting, exciting, memorable, all that stuff. It's stressful as hell as you go through it, but these are going to be games that are sort of flashpoint moments for the season. And if they come away with wins, it's going to feel damn good. And so here's the hope that they can. We'll come back on the other side and pivot into a mailbag because you, the people out there, have lots of questions. Some of you are quite worried about the state of things. We'll get into all of that coming up in just 1 second. See if I can, soothe your frayed nerves. We'll do that in a moment. Today's show is brought to you by Indeed. Maybe you have workplace chaos. You have deadlines stacking up, inboxes overflowing, and that one position you got to fill is still sitting open. It can be a huge stressor. And when the pressure's on, you need the right hire for the job that you have open. This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs, which helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for with skills, experience, and locations that match exactly your requirements. You're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. You're actually putting it in front of their face so they can say, hey, that's a job for me. I'm going to click through and apply right now. And you can get the hiring process done and dusted quickly and efficiently. Here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours will make 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help you get the premium job status you deserve at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about it here on Locked On Raptors. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. All right, back at it here. And we've got mailbag questions from the freaks in the Locked On Raptors Discord server. Always appreciate those who send in questions. And again, if you want to get questions into the show, you can always send them on in via the mailbag questions chat in the Discord. Link in the description of the podcast to sign on up for the Discord as always. Okay, this first question comes in from, I had it here. Here we go. Wilcox1232 asks, what's the supporting evidence that we can actually pull a first-round upset, assuming we're a play-in team, and get out? Because, boy, am I struggling to find a case. Look, the top 4 teams in the Eastern Conference are better than the rest of the teams in the Eastern Conference. There is no doubt about that. I don't see a case that the Raptors could upset the Celtics. I think they're just too good. They're too polished. They're too experienced. And they're just like really well coached, and they know exactly who they are, and they shoot a million threes, and it's a recipe to have a hard time math-wise for the Raptors. They're a great turnover differential team, all of that. We saw it required the Celtics to have 15 turnovers in their game on Sunday for the Raptors to even really have a puncher's chance to beat them. And I just don't know if you can count on that over the course of a full series. They're just really, really good. So I don't think there's a case there. The Knicks, the matchup is not great. The Raptors have lost to the Knicks a bunch this year. I do think there are some interesting things the Raptors can do, chess pieces to play, levers and cranks to pull to make it interesting with New York. Obviously, I think the real sort of key card for them to play in that series, that matchup, is Scotty Barnes and Collin Murray-Boyles, just switching the Jalen Brunson, Karl Anthony Towns pick and roll. And then you have Jacoby Walter and, Immanuel Quickley is kind of like off-ball guys. You can stick on Josh Hart if you want. I don't think it's a huge Jakob Poeltl series. You might sort of match him up with Mitchell Robinson's minutes, for example, just to have the size out there. But when the Towns thing is out there, if you can just go Murray-Boyles, Barnes, and kind of switch that action with Brunson and with Barnes, or maybe you have Jacoby Walter kind of sprinkle in there as well, and Barnes working as a help guy. I think they have defensive things they can kind of throw out there against the Knicks to cause them trouble. We've seen, though, when they have kind of zeroed in and given Brunson and Towns a lot of trouble, they've just been kind of bereft of guys who can slow down the wings on the Knicks. And OG, Bridges, they've gone absolutely ham against the Raptors this year. Maybe that's single game weirdness. Maybe you can't count on that over the course of a full series. Mikal Bridges has been not very good down the stretch. OG, we know from experience, can kind of wax and wane with, where his offense is at. But it's a pretty deep team. They have a lot of different looks they can throw at themselves. They can go shooting heavy. And if you have to play a lot of Jakob Poeltl because Collin Murray-Boyles has foul trouble or whatever, that could be a rough Jakob Poeltl series. Again, I would pick the Knicks to win that probably in 5 or 6, but I think there's stuff the Raptors can do to make it a little more interesting. And the Knicks have had just kind of strange vibes for a while now, so maybe you can catch them at the right time. The Pistons, I think the case is just that their offense is not that dynamic. And we saw it in the game where the Raptors beat the Pistons earlier this season, where they have a balance issue, right? Where you can have Duncan Robinson out there and you can have Ausar Thompson out there, but is Ausar Thompson good enough on offense? Or are you just going to leave him completely unguarded and clamp in on the rest of the offense and really make it hell for them? And at what point do they have to sort of, okay, well, we got to sub in Kevin Huerter here to just go full shooting or whatever it might be. We got to sub in, Danis Jenkins and in a sort of dual backcourt with Cade Cunningham. And what does that do to the dynamics of the team and to their defense, right? Because Ausar Thompson is so essential to their defense, same as Duncan Robinson is essential to their offense. We saw them absolutely punish Duncan Robinson in the game they won. And, the Raptors, I think, in a playoff series where they kind of grind things down and it's a lot of Brandon Ingram ISO and Scotty Barnes mismatch hunting, that could be a team where, you're going to win it ugly if you do win it. Those games will be in the 90s. They will be nasty, nasty games. There will be games where the Pistons just completely outmuscle you. They just truck you out of the way. Jalen Duren's awesome. They would be the comfortable favorites in that series as well. But I think with their offense not being super potent, Cade coming back, we'll see where he's at physically. And again, maybe the 1-8 is the least likely of the matchups here for the Raptors, but I think, that's the case to beat the Pistons. They're just not a great offensive team. And the Raptors defense is good enough that I think you can just kind of play some rock fights there and maybe scrape out a few wins. But yeah, I think that's still one the Pistons probably win in 6. The Cavs are the really interesting one. On talent, they're probably one of the two best teams in the conference, just pure talent on paper. But they got some things working against them. Their lack of wings, I think, is something the Raptors have shown they can take advantage of. I think that would be a big Brandon Ingram series. I think it would be a big Scotty Barnes series. I think we've seen Scotty relishes the Evan Mobley matchup and has a lot of success in that matchup typically. And Jared Allen and Jakob Poeltl are kind of kindred spirits a little bit, where it's just they're kind of very expensive, maybe a little bit misfitting big men who may or may not be able to play in the heaviest, highest leverage minutes. Obviously their guard play is the huge advantage they have in that series, and their offense is really potent, and you just might not be able to score enough to keep up with them. But the sort of dichotomy of team builds there, the sort of guard heavy look versus the wing heavy look with the Raptors, I think would create an interesting styles make fights kinds of matchup. And so, yeah, I think, again, you probably lose that series. It's tough to sort of picture any of the teams outside of the top 4 making into the second round. If we're being totally real, maybe the Hornets are, people talk themselves into the Hornets. I still think they got some issues that are going to come to roost in the playoffs defensively. But it's hard to do it for any team. It's not just the Raptors that are in this boat. The top 4 teams are really good, but I do think matchup wise, there are some things that the Raptors can sort of poke around with. And I think Scotty Barnes is really damn good. And I think in a playoff series, we've seen he can kind of bring it in his very brief playoff appearance back in 2022. We'll see about what version of playoff Brandon Ingram you get, but I think there's some stuff there. And the fact that Collin Murray-Boyles, Jacoby Walter, and Mamu have kind of rounded into form, and even Jamal Shed, I think there's a workable, interesting, sort of reliable playoff rotation here for the Raptors to toss out and take their chances. But yeah, it's going to be a tall ask no matter who they end up playing in the first round if they make it there. Next one here comes from Anthony T asking, while yes, they've surprised a lot of people and even exceeded expectation for the season, are the Raptors is currently constructed closer to their floor or ceiling? I think it's interesting. They're probably a little closer to their ceiling, just on pure talent. I think we've talked plenty, right? They need to upgrade the guard play situation. They are probably going to continue to scour for star trades with their 4 first-round picks they still have on hand to offer up, and the contracts they have. They have a couple of interesting young guys now to maybe kind of throw around it as a sweetener if you're going for a real big upgrade. And I think they are probably closer to their ceiling. I don't think this team, I think in the right year where everything hits, maybe they're a 50-win team, maybe in the Eastern Conference. I think it's, their floor is also I don't think they're that far up from their floor either, right? They're a very sort of narrow outcome kind of team. I think their floor is probably 41 wins. I think there's barring massive injury. Like there's just too much NBA level in their prime talent on this team for them to be bad. And there's just not quite enough super high end talent for them to be great. But I don't think that necessarily has to be a problem, right? Like I think the sort of notion of building from the middle gets so poo-pooed, but it's a successful model for some teams. And for the Raptors, a team that has used the build from the middle model to win a championship less than a decade ago, like I think it's all right to try to do that again. And it might, maybe you just don't have the patience for it, right? Like patience wears thin. The sort of timeline of teams has been a little bit accelerated in the NBA because of the CBA and the second aprons and all that stuff. But I think there's a proven track record that teams can, in fact, build from the middle with the right moves. And maybe they don't make the right moves, right? There's always the possibility of that. But there's also the possibility that if you kind of bottom out and try to tank to the bottom, that you're just never going to get the right moves, the right luck, the right picks, the right sort of sequence of events you need to get back up to contention. It's all fraught. It's all probably doomed to not end in a championship, no matter the team build you go with. And for the Raptors, like they got a lot of interesting players on hand. And look, I don't think you would have said back in 2013-14 that team had a very high ceiling either, right? And they didn't. Like that was a team that got swept in the first round in their second year of being good after losing in the first round the year before. They regressed. And I don't think anyone in 2014-15 after that season was just like, oh yeah, well, this team's fine. This team's going to go on and win a whole bunch of games and win 56 games next year, make the conference finals and be a second round team every year beyond this. Like that was not on the table for a lot of people in 2014-15. There were very loud calls to blow it up. And I just think patience is such an underappreciated tool in the toolkit for team building. And I think being in the conversation, winning in the 40s, having compelling, interesting regular seasons where you're playing real games, you're not just pissing away development opportunities playing non-basketball like the Memphis Grizzlies are right now. Like I think there's a lot of value to that. And I think, yes, this team might be close to its ceiling. It doesn't mean they always will be. It doesn't mean that there aren't moves out there that can change their station. It doesn't mean that they couldn't have Collin Murray-Boyles really pop in year 2 or year 3 and change the complexion of the team and raise their ceiling. As constructed, yeah, like there's probably not a huge amount of upward mobility, but I don't think there's a lot of downward mobility either. And I think if you are a mid-40s team in wins every year, there are way worse places to be, even though the sort of tank-brained faction of NBA internet will tell you this is the worst place you could be. You should basically quit and retire from the sport if you are one of these teams. And I just don't think that's where the Raptors are. And yes, the Eastern Conference is good. It's getting better. There are going to be some teams that kind of get back in the mix next year. There will also be teams that fall out of the mix because that's always what happens. There are always injuries. There are always freak seasons. Everyone has a season from hell at some point. And so I think you can only kind of control what you can control. And right now the Raptors have a roster of pretty good players. Scotty Barnes is awesome. Murray-Boyles, Walter, those are guys to dream on a little bit. They have a first-round pick this year and all their picks going forward. Like this is far from, oh God, they're stuck here forever and there's no upward mobility ever. With this current roster, maybe, but that doesn't mean that they can't go and find other avenues to upward mobility this summer and beyond. We'll come back into the side, rattle through a few more questions. I'll probably not get to all the ones that came in. We got some really good ones, and maybe we'll save those for a later mailbag, hopefully during some off days next week as we await the playoffs. But we'll cross the bridge when we come to it, see how many we can rattle through coming up here in just one sec to close out the show. Today's show is brought to you by Wayfair. Wayday is here, and if you've been thinking about upgrading your space, this is the time to do it. We're talking about some of the best deals of the year on furniture, decor, outdoor essentials, everything you need to refresh your home. During Wayday, Wayfair is offering up to 80% off with fast and free shipping on everything, making it easy to find pieces that fit your style and your budget. It's super easy to filter by style, size, and price. You're not just wasting time scrolling. The reviews and photos help you feel confident in what you're getting, and Wayfair verified products are vetted by specialists, so you know you're getting quality. Maybe you're trying to upgrade your outdoor space as the warm weather maybe starts to arrive soon. It's kind of cold today, but like it's going to get here at some point, and you want to have that outdoor lounge chair so you can read and drink margs and all that stuff. You can go find what you need for your outdoor space before the summertime over at Wayday on Wayfair. Wayday is the sale to shop the best deals in home. We're talking up to 80% off with fast and free shipping on everything. Head to wayfair.com April 25th through April 27th to shop Wayday. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. And look, I love Game Time. I'm a regular Game Time user because it's the single best way to get tickets for the sporting events you want to go to without all the hassle, without all the surprise fees, and without the ridiculous prices. Because they tell you these are the best prices for the tickets right now. You can go to get them here in this section for this amount. There's a little flame next to it saying it's a good deal. It's very easy for me, someone who's kind of stupid, looking at my app, trying to figure out how do I save myself the most money. Game Time just tells you that. All in pricing up front. It's a huge deal. You get views from your seat. If you've never been to a venue before, that's a really big deal as well. And the zone deals are great. You can choose a section. Game Time picks the seats and you save. Great last minute options too. Maybe you want to go to Raptors-Heat tonight and you're walking around downtown at 6:30 p.m. and say, hey, it's near game time. Why don't I buy some tickets here at Game Time? You can go do that, and you're probably going to get better prices closer to game time as well. Everything feels quick, intuitive, stress-free from start to finish. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Create an account. Use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. That's code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. And remember, it's GameTime.co, not GameTime.com. Go GameTime.co. Go check it out. All right, wrapping things up here with some mailbag questions from you, the lovely listeners in the Locked On Raptors Discord server. Let's get to a couple more here. And again, we'll probably save some of these for another mailbag later. I promise they will stay in the hopper. And a lot of them are very off-season tilted, so we'll be able to kind of peruse them, and they'll still be timely. But let's get into this one here from Geyser asking question. How do you rate this roster in comparison to the last time we went to the playoffs in 2021-22? It's interesting because that team was a little smoke and mirrors, as sort of history has told us. They played an extremely weird style that I think caught teams off guard. And they kind of had like 6 or 7 guys maybe that you trusted to actually play minutes. And a couple of those guys were Precious Achiuwa and Chris Boucher, who just kind of like funked their way to successful minutes. I think this team makes a lot more sort of on paper sense. Remember, that Raptors team in 2020 did not have a center. Like Jakob Poeltl was not around then. They just didn't have a center, and they kind of made it work. You know, I think OG Anunoby, Pascal Siakam, fantastic players. Pascal would be the best player on this Raptors team in all likelihood. Him and Scotty flip a coin, whatever. Very good at different things. But I think the way this team is built, as much as they still have kind of under-indexed on shooting and guards, certainly have more shooting and guards than that team had, where it had kind of like a broken Fred VanVleet and I guess Gary Trent Jr. as their only sort of guards to speak of on the roster. Jacoby Walter would have been just like a godsend for that team as a three-point shooter. I think Collin Murray-Boyles would have fitted very nicely on that team as a Vision 6'9" coded player. Immanuel Quickley, I think, is a very good player. RJ Barrett, I think, we'll see how he fares in the playoffs. It's been a bit of a mixed bag for him over the years, but yeah, Brandon Ingram, it's just a more balanced and sort of sensible roster, even if it's not the most sensible and balanced roster you've ever seen. That 2021-22 team was exceptionally weird. And you might have been able to spook the Sixers because the Sixers were kind of frail and were not particularly scary that season. I don't think that team really had a shot at any of the other teams in the Eastern Conference to beat them. This Raptors team, it's felt a little bit underwhelming. They haven't closed the way that team did in 2022, where they were just red hot over the final month and a half of the year to, I think, win 48 games. I think this team is maybe a little less sort of they're going to confuse opposing teams a little less because they are kind of, we know what this team is, how they play and all that stuff. But I think I trust this team a little bit more. Their half-court offense a lot better. It's a really important thing to note as well. That half-court offense back in 21-22 was terrible and was always going to have trouble in the playoffs. The Raptors half-court offense this season, middle of the pack, they're fine. They're not great, but they're fine. And I think, can kind of hold up under the rigors of playoff basketball a little more than that extremely transition and offensive rebounding dependent team in 2021-22 was able to. It's a good question, though. This one here comes from Matt T asking, if given the choice, would you add a three-point shooting, playmaking point guard behind IQ or a passing rim protector in case Yak misses a lot of time next season? Which one is more important next season? Full stop. It is another guard to pair with IQ, or turning IQ into a better guard, or turning someone on the roster into a better guard. Like the center question, I think we saw this year. Yes, Poeltl missed a lot of time. When he was out, the Raptors didn't really skip a beat. Murray-Boyles, Scotty, Mamu, all three of them were fantastic. Obviously, we don't know if Mamu's going to be around next year. That changes the dynamic here a little bit, but Murray-Boyles just is a good center. He is one of probably the 30 best players at playing center in the NBA already. I know he's not tall. He's 6'7". He plays up to the size of the position, and I think he's comfortable there, and I'm just not concerned. And so, yeah, the clear glaring need here is more guard play, more three-point shooting, more on-ball creation. And if you can find that to pair with Quickley, or you turn Quickley or someone else into that guard, that has to be the priority. Like, you might not find the forever guard, as I've said a couple times this year. Like, this might not be the year you get your Donovan Mitchell trade like the Cavs did back in 2022, whenever that was. But this can be a year where you just go and sort of address the constant under-indexing of guard play on the roster with whatever it is, your exceptions, maybe a trade here and there. Like, you just need more guards on the roster to make it make more sense. And I think like Scotty Barnes plus like a handful of guards, pretty dangerous combination. And I think you got to sort of peruse the market as best you can to find those types of players. Because, a backup center would be nice. A long-term succession plan to Pirtle would be nice. By far, they need guard play over more center play, considering the wealth of front court options they currently have. Let's get to one last question here. And this is, we're going to go tempo on this one. WNBA. Loquacious Drew asks, tempo mailbag question. How would you like to see the team? Who would you like the team target in free agency? I've got a couple of names. There's sort of these sort of pie in the sky. Oh my God, that would be delightful. And it would make me so happy. People who I think are probably unlikely to like leave their teams. And then there's one who I think is like, if the tempo can go and sign that player, I think that is a wonderful building block piece to start to go forward with. And there might be some reason why it's not a total pie in the sky thing. We'll get into that in a sec. But I think if I'm going just like absolute fantasy, like dream, they go and sign this player, give me Chelsea Gray. If you're not familiar with Chelsea Gray, just like the Chris Paul, Kyle Lowry brand of point guard, playing for the Vegas Aces, multi-time WNBA champion, little older. I think she's 34, but like just a delightful player to watch. And I think if you wanted to like have someone to kind of come in and set the table for your team from day one, Chelsea Gray is the player to do that. Think it's very, very, very unlikely Chelsea Gray is moving from Las Vegas to Toronto to start up an expansion team when the Aces are basically a dynasty, but you can dream. The actual player I think Toronto should really be zeroed in on to try to sign here is Easy Magbagor. If you're not familiar with Easy Magbagor, she is a center, power forward, mostly center, plays for the Seattle Storm, 26 years old, 4-time all-defense player, 1-time all-star, finished third in Defensive Player of the Year voting, not last season, but the season before. Just like a really solid anchor of a player to kind of build a defense around, who also happens to be Australian and has played on the Aussie national team for tempo coach Sandy Brundello. Of course, the sort of pool of free agents is extremely wide, and there are all kinds of sort of motivations for every player here. And will they go back? Will they not? Will they switch teams? All of that stuff. But I think if you can get Easy Magbagor from Seattle as sort of the anchor of your defense to kind of start things out, you pair her up with Nyara Sabali, who they drafted in the expansion draft. Maybe you can find some guard play, whether it's you draft like a very high-end guard, like a Raven Johnson, to kind of be your point guard from day one, or you go and you sign a different point guard at a free agency. Like, there's plenty of those as well. Maybe a scoring guard like Jewel Lloyd, who's a free agent as well. Like, I think there's all kinds of options here. It's the beauty of like being an expansion team when everyone's a free agent. The possibilities are kind of endless, but Easy Magbagor is the player I would kind of zero in on. If you can go and sort of target one of those, we talked about it a couple weeks ago with Chelsea Late. You're probably not getting one of the superstar tier players who's a free agent. You're not getting Kalia Copper. You're not getting Alicia Gray, Jackie Young, Kelsey Plum, any of those free agents. You're probably not kind of playing at that level. But can you go and convince someone like a Magbagor to come in that sort of second tier, which Chelsea said the tempo will probably be playing in? That would be awesome. And again, the connection with Sandy Brundello is there. That's my hope anyway. We'll see in the next few days. I think 9th is when we'll start to see some free agents. April 9th, we'll see some free agent news starting to filter in, which is pretty cool and very exciting. Tempo time. It's going to be awesome. We're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for rocking with the show. We'll be back again on Wednesday to talk about Raptors-Heat 1.0, I guess 3.0. I don't know. This is also like the millionth time these teams have played in my life, and I've hated every single one of them. So we will talk about that tomorrow. Hopefully a nice big win for the Raptors as they continue to kind of make their push for a top 6. And if they don't, we'll, overreact and get despondent accordingly. In the meantime, follow, subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend, join the Discord, link in the description of the podcast. I forgot to mention it earlier, but it's very important. The Locked On Raptors Everydayer Club is available for you to sign on up. You can sign it up at the link in the description of the podcast. LockedOnRaptors.supercast.com as well is the URL to just head straight to. $5 a month, $50 for the year, ad-free episodes of the show every single day, plus access to our Locked On network-wide Discord. It's a fun little group chat talking Blue Jays, talking basketball, talking individual on every local show's channel. If you listen to multiple Locked On shows, you can go and jump on in there as well. Maybe you're a Bills fan. I want to listen to Locked On Bills. Maybe you're a Sabres fan. You know, plenty of people in Toronto like the Buffalo Sabres too. Maybe, I don't know. And they're in the playoffs, and that chat is popping off. So lots of reasons to go and join the Locked On network-wide Discord by signing up for the Everydayer Club. Again, link in the description of the podcast, just $5 a month or $50 for the year, plus all those ad-free episodes, baby. Ad-free living. It's the best. Back again Wednesday. Thanks so much. Have a great rest of your day. Talk soon. And gosh, just please beat the Heat. Bye-bye.